Okay, we are going to take this background right here, this digital background. I already have it in Photoshop, and we're going to take a subject, put in here that I already have in Photoshop, and I'm going to demonstrate how you would add the subject, the model into this backdrop and blend the subject into the ground and do the highlights and shadowing and everything to make them look like they was actually in this photo. That's the whole point. So right here, I'm going to take this model, and I picked this photo on purpose because her with this big flowy dress and everything, it's going to be a lot more difficult to blend something like this into that tall grass. So that's the reason I picked this. Normally, if somebody else was, going to take and put a model in to that background, one or two people, if they're standing straight up and down, it's not going to be that tough to do. This a little tougher. So let's go ahead and bring this over in here and drop it in there. Control T to bring up the transform. I'm going to size her for this photo, and I'm going to make her just a little bit taller, closer to this barn door, so I can keep her up in this tall grass. That's where it's going to be the most difficult, is trying to blend her in with this tall grass. So I'm going to move her just a little bit, rotation, there we go, and hit my check mark. Alright, so we're going to blend her into this tall grass so it looks realistic. So an easy way to do that, there's several ways to do it, just like in Photoshop. If there's something that you want to do, you can definitely count on there's probably 5 to 10 ways to do it. This is one of the ways. It's probably the easiest way, is to come down here and add a layer mask to that model right there. White layer mask. We're going to use a black brush at opacity 100% and a flow 100%. So you can just click right here, or you can click on the names, left click, hold it, and drag it left or right to adjust these things. Okay, so to do this, we are going to need a brush that resembles this tall grass. There's no other way around it. That's what we got to do. I already have one for this, doing this kind of stuff, but you can go on Google, and you can Google search Photoshop brushes, tall grass Photoshop brushes, download it. You would click right here, like here's my brushes, and you would click, once you download it, you can click it right here and hit import brushes and bring that brush right in here to where you can select it. So I am going to go up here and I want to select my tall grass brush, which is right there. And I'm going to use this one. I've got several different ones here, but this one really matches this grass. So I'm going to use it. So I'm going to close that right there. Then I'll come up here and select this right here. This is your brush settings. May look different for you on your screen. This is just the way I have mine set up. And we're going to check mark scattering. Come over here, click right here. We're going to bring this menu up, and I'm going to add a little scattering to that. Around 60%. And then we'll leave that off. And then I will come up here and check mark my shape dynamics. Click on that. Bring this menu up. And here we're going to add a little bit angle. You can see it's changing. I'm going to add a little angle so it makes it more realistic. And the size jitter, as you click and you drag this around or you're clicking, it's going to take this from bigger to a little smaller. It's going to stagger the size, which is what you want. You don't want a uniform thing because it's going to look fake. So here's how you do it. Angle jitter, and we're going to raise our size jitter up here to around 20, by right in there. And then I'm going to hit this flip X jitter down here. You can see that kind of pulls in the tops right here, pulls them in a little tighter. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that. And first thing I want to do is I want to make my brush a little smaller. We're going to blend this bottom edge in here. We're going to blend that into the ground. So the easy way to change your brush size and your hardness and everything is you will press and hold Alt on your keyboard, and then you will right click and hold down on that on your mouse, and if you push forward, that controls your opacity. We want it at 100%, so my opacity is up here. You can see it changing up there at the top, up here to where opacity is at. So I'm going to leave it at 100, and if you, as you're holding it, you pull left and right on your mouse, and that controls the size. So we're going to make this kind of small, about right in there. And then I'm just going to come through here and make sure this is on black. Right there. It's got to be on black. So what I want to do is I want to hit my X button, and that's going to toggle these two. That's a quick, easy way to do it instead of coming here and clicking. So we're just going to click right here, and we're going to drag to blend that bottom in. And you want to hit this kind of heavy, because in that tall grass you would not see that bottom. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to make my brush a little bigger, and this time instead of just clicking and dragging, I am just going to kind of dot it around. Do what you think looks natural to the photo. Your choice of how you want it. A little more in there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to make my brush a little bigger. Press and hold Alt, right click and hold it, and pull to the right, make your brush bigger. Now I'm going to change my direction here. See how once you snap it, it changes direction on its own. That's the whole adjustment that we did right here. I'll hit Control Z to take that away. And come over and dot that. Maybe one right down in here. Right there. Maybe right up here, like that. There we go. Now I'm going to hit this a little heavier right down here. But I'm just kind of pulling it, just using the tops of this brush to do that down there. Okay, so our model is blended into the ground now. As you can see, right click on that layer mask right there and click disable. That's what it was when we brought it in here. Right click, enable it, and there we go. Okay, so we have the bottom blended in, and I'm just doing this kind of quick. You can take your time. You can hit Control Z, take it back. You can get it exactly the way you want these. If I was doing this, I would take my time and get a little more realistic, but that looks pretty good for example. That gives you an idea of how to do it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to inspect the background here, and we're going to look at these colors. Up here you have a little bit of purples in here, the shadow purples. Down here you have some warmth. So what we're going to do is we're going to color grade her to fit this background to make it realistic. Right now she kind of stands out like a sore thumb. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on my brushes. I'm going to grab my regular brush back again, right there. Change that, and then I'm going to come up here to my adjustments. I'm going to do an adjustment layer of a color balance. I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click this to clip it to her. That way this adjustment only affects her. Does nothing to the background whatsoever. First thing I'll do is come here, click this menu, select shadows, and I'm just going to grab each one of these. I'm going to move them around. And you want this picture kind of small like this. You don't want it zoomed up real tight because you want to see the whole photo and how she's blending into the whole photo. So you don't want it zoomed up real big. This right here is really good because I can see everything. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab this. I'm going to pull that right there. There we go. Okay. I did -13, -3, and then a +2 right there. And that adjusted the darker shadows to the background. So now I will select the midtones, do the same exact thing. Start at the top. There we go. That's +3, -5, -3. Now I'll move to the highlights, same exact thing. This right here actually adds that kind of the purple highlights you see on that wood on the barn. So I'm going to raise that up a little bit to there we go, -5 on that. Okay. Yeah, I would say right there. Just leave that on 0. Go ahead and close that. And I'm going to shut this on and off so you can see the big difference. That's what it was. And that's her color graded into this background. And that looks pretty good. So now we are going to work on some highlights and shadows, which is dodge and burn. So if you look on this background, you have these boards going, these vertical boards, or any background you're going to have objects. You can see, especially if it's natural light, like outside, you're going to see shadow on one side or the other on objects. So here are shadows on the left hand side of these, as you can see. They're right there. They're not here on the right hand side, they're on the left hand side. So what I want to do is I want to put shadow over here, highlight over here. That way it replicates the background. Okay, so to do that, come over here on this layer, click on that to select that layer, and then we're going to double click over here to bring up layer style box. Okay, here's our layer style. We're going to do an inner glow right there. Then I'm going to click right here, and that's going to bring up the whole menu for the inner glow. And here you can change this for the type of lighting that you want. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to bring that down just a little bit right in there, and I'm going to pull this over right there. And that's just going to be the highlights on that side. I know it's showing effect on everything, but we're not going to be doing that. So we'll just hit OK. And I always set this on Usually the default is screen. I always set it on color dodge. And then you can play with your opacity or everything. That really doesn't matter because we're going to adjust it here in a little bit. So I'm just going to put it like on 25, 26 right there. And then of course your size down here. I like to pull that up and then we're going to adjust it with the brush. So we're going to make that big to where it feathers in really good. So we're just going to hit OK right there on that. And then right here we're going to right click and we're going to come down here, we're going to select create layer. It's going to make a layer out of that. Right there it is. We're going to click on that and we're going to come down here, we're going to press and hold Alt on our keyboard and then we're going to select that layer mask and that's going to black that out. It's going to hide all that. So now we're going to toggle to our white brush to reveal it where we want it. We're just going to paint it on where we want it. So for this right here, we're going to change, I always usually do my flow. So we're going to change that. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to bring my brush up a little bit bigger and the hardness at 0. That way it feathers in. And then I'm going to come up here, I'm going to click this, I'm going to drag that to the left. I'm going to set it on about 4 or 5. That's 4. And then a white brush, hit X to toggle to white. And we're just going to come over here and we're going to hit that right there. Right here on this side. A little bit right up here on top of her head. There we go. And then if you get it somewhere where you don't want it, all you have to do is hit the X button, toggle back to black, and brush take it off. That being on a downside right there, that's going to have a little more shadow, so we're going to take it off there. Now, hit our X and go back to white, and inside of her arm being on this side would show highlight. So I'm just going to paint that highlight in right there. And just do a little bit right up here on the top, right here on this edge. Okay. So I'm going to turn that on and off so you can see it. There it is. Now we can grab this right here, click on that where it says fill, and we can drag it to the left and then drag it to the right to reveal it to where we want it. I'm going to set that on about 17. Now on this side you're going to have shadow. You're going to have the burning on this side. So we're going to left click, double left click right there again. Bring up your layer style and we're going to do an inner shadow. Click right there and that brings up your menu. Now I've already got this pretty much set for how I like putting shadows on subjects and models. I usually keep my size up around like 70 pixels, a little bit bigger so it feathers in. And what is nice about this, I'm going to show you a little trick here, is instead of sitting here trying to play with this global light angle here, I'm going to show you an easy way to do that. I want to turn this all the way up, this opacity all the way up so you can see this. You can actually just come over here and click and you can pull that around right there. You pull it around. So since the shadow is going to be on the left side of her, just like the boards in the background, we're going to just go pull that forwards to where we get that shadow right there. And then turn that opacity down. And you can see that adds dimension to your photo. Looks really good. Okay, I'm going to leave it on like 68 right now. Just hit OK. And then we got the same thing here. Come over here and right click right there. Make a layer of that by creating layer. And there it is. There's that. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to select that layer, press and hold Alt, and click the layer mask. Now we're going to take a white brush and we're going to paint that effect on where we want it. So we're going on this side. So let's just go ahead and hit that. It'll be a little darker up here, a little darker right in there. That's an outside, so it'd be a little lighter, a little darker right there, a little darker on the inside of here, maybe a little bit right here on the outside of her hair, and right in there. There we go. And then put some right there. And then we will come down here. I'm going to make my brush bigger because I'm going to paint this down here, because down towards the ground you always have the darker shadow. So we'll just kind of hit that right there. You can see. And up that back edge. There we go. Alright. So let's toggle that on and off so you can see it. It's very slight, but it adds a lot of dimension. Okay, now since you have shadow in your background that you're putting your model into, like I am here, we have shadows on the left hand sides of these objects. We need to do a backdrop shadow to make us completely realistic. If this has shadows, then she has to have some kind of shadow. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do the same exact thing. Come over here, double right click, double left click right there, bring up the layer style, and then we will check mark the drop shadow, and we can click that right there, and that brings up that menu. Always keep this up 100% on multiply, and I keep my size up on that as well. As you can see, there's a very hard edge, and as you bring it up, it softens it out like a real shadow. So we're just going to leave that right there and hit OK. And then we will do the same exact thing. Right click right here, create a layer out of that. This is going to be underneath right there. Now I'm going to, since that's on its own layer, I can do a Control T to move it. I'm going to Control T that, and then I'm just going to kind of pull that back here like that. There we go. As you can see, she ain't going to have no shadows here on the front. It's going to be back here. So we just kind of pull that up there, and I'm going to pull it down just a little bit towards the back. About right there. It's like one click over, just to offset it on the back side. So hit check mark there, and then the same exact thing. We're going to click and hold Alt with that layer selected, and click the layer mask. White brush, and we're going to turn this flow up to like 30% right there, and make this brush pretty big, like around like that. Now I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to click and add that shadow in where I want it. There we go. Now like back in here, you can see back in here, that's going to be a little darker than out here. So we're just going to click and add a little bit more into that area right there. And same thing goes right there. Okay. Now I'm going to adjust the fill of that. So I'm going to click on this, on where it says fill, and I'm going to pull it to the left. I'm going to pull it up where I want it. Just keep pulling it to the right. And there we go. That looks pretty good. There we go. Now that blends her right into this picture, that background. Okay. There's one more trick that we're going to do here. Is we're going to do a little bit of burning on her and her dress to add some dimension. This has got a lot of dimension. Want to do the same with your subject. So the way to do that is I'm going to click on her layer, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click this little dude right here, and I'm going to do a solid color. Okay, a solid color. Now this is set at complete 100% black. Okay, I don't want 100% black. I want more of these colors right here, so we can actually, once this color picker comes up, actually come in here and just select that color. See there, there's that black. I'm just going to stay with a little bit of the darker black because I can adjust it with the opacity. So I'm going to select OK right there on that, and then over here I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to double click over here on that. We'll bring up the layer style, and this is going to be different. Right here we're going to set the blend mode on multiply, and then down here this is blend if. This represents the darks, the shadows. This side represents your highlights. So with shadows, you don't want the shadows on the highlights. You don't want them on the highlights, so we're going to pull them off the highlights. So we're just going to click here on that little guy there and pull it to the left. Right about right in there. You can see it's adding some dimension on the back side of her arm there and in her hair. Now it looks kind of rough. Here's a little trick. Press and hold Alt, and then right here on this side you can split this apart. You click that and pull that, and then you can let off the Alt, and that smooths that out. There you go, right about right in there. And now I'm going to lower my opacity. And here you're just looking at those shadows. You just want to look at shadows. There we go. 30% is good. Hit OK, and then right here I'm going to click on the layer mask, and I'm going to invert that so it hides the whole adjustment, and we're just going to paint it where we want it. So to do that, you press Shift Control I. Okay, so now with a white brush, we're just coming in and put some detail in her hair. Just click in the darks, hit those darks. You can see how it's adding dimension, like underneath the flowers there. And the good thing about this is it's really not going to affect anything on the highlights, so you really don't have to worry about that because the blend if pulled off the highlights. So just do a little bit of that here, a little bit right there, underneath the chin a little bit, right there, and you're just going to hit where the shadows are, like in the dress. Now a darker color like this, you got to be a little more spot on because it's going to read everywhere on there. So I'm going to adjust my flow down on this to around like 8, and just hit these lines. And I'm not going to do a whole lot. This is just give you the idea. You would want to spend good time doing this, because you can really make a picture come alive by doing this. But that gives you the idea of how to do it, and you'll be able to see what it does. Okay. Now this is pretty amazing because I mean you can actually just watch the detail. When you're doing this, you just watch it, and the detail just comes into it and just makes it come alive. Alright, so there we go. There's that. That's a big difference. Alright. And that's pretty much it. I mean, from this point right here, if you want to play around with like any other type of color grades, you can come up here and put something over the top of it. You can, if you mess it up, you can always delete it, take it off there. You can come up here like on your selected color, put that over top, and you can come up here to like the yellows. You can come up to yellows, and you can, you can sit here and color grade it around the way you want it, adjust it all around. It's like the blues. I was showing you these blues up in here in them shadows. You can see them. If I adjust the blackness to whiteness, you can see those. They're very evident. I'm going to take them off just a little bit. Adjust that off. There we go. Alright, that's pretty good right there. Looks pretty good. Now if you want to put a little bit of a matting to this to kind of give it that soft look, you can actually come up here to exposure. I want to show you how to do this. You can hit exposure, and then this offset. It doesn't take much to do this. You just, very little. Just click here and pull it to the right a little bit, and you can throw a little bit of matting on there. See how it softens everything up, and that kind of helps everything kind of blend in. You can actually grab here and pull it around to adjust it, and then you can play with the exposure a little bit. There we go. That looks phenomenal. I think it looks really good. There we go. And that is how you do it right there.